Okay, now we finished last time, last year, small scope. I think all of us now clear. Now, important thing is the practice. The practice is the most important. You know, just finishing teaching doesn't mean uh, now we achievement. It doesn't mean we achieve it. Only the achievement is after the practice. So in order to do the practice, of course, first, make sure fully understanding correctly. Without understanding correctly, then practice is very difficult. It's very, very confused. So that's why first, to understand, and then as long as when you're understanding, investigate, understand,
Understand?
and
Uh,
uh, could you please mute it? Somebody they join it. Okay. So understanding that long rim, then put it into the practice. I think that's the way how we achieve it. So small scopes, we practicing in the small scopes. One of our main the practice the small scope is, of course, uh, understanding the stuffing of three lower rims, and through that we have strong fear to fall into one of these three lower rims, and we have a fear about these three lowering suffering, and that's why the freedom of three lower rims is the uh, higher rebirths, human and God realms. So they're seeking one person to achieve higher rebirth. Uh, That's the main small scope focus, the intention, seeking oneself to born in a higher rebirth, free from three low rims. So in order to achieve three higher rebirth, first we have to understanding what are the causes of three lower rims. Of course, the fundamental causes of three lower rims are 10 non-virtuous actions. The 10 non-virtuous actions are the not only causes of three lower in suffering, even in the this life, the major our suffering are also causes by uh, 10 non-virtuous actions. So 3 from body, 4 from speech, and 3 from our mind. Right? 3 from body, which are killing, stealing, sexual misconduct, and then 4 from our speech, which are telling lies, lie, idle gossip, harsh word, and what you call slander or the divisive speech. So these are the four uh, negative speech through our negative action through our speech. Then the three from mind, which are harmfulness, covetousness, and the wrong view. So these are the 10 non-virtues, which are the fundamental causes of through lower rims. As a small scope practitioner, at least our daily life should live without using 10 non-virtuous action. That's the main, the practice, put it into your life. So we should live our life, with the small scopes practice, which means at least don't accumulate any 10 non-virtuous karma. So live your life avoiding uh, those 10 non-virtues, 10 non-virtuous karmas. So that's the fundamental of the practice. As a small scope practitioners, if you live your life, daily your life, always without 10 non-virtues, always live with the 10 virtues, the action, that's I think, the purpose, one of the purpose to practicing a small scope. Then, but to develop that kind of strong sort of to live like that kind of lifestyle, of course, then we first need to excellent teacher or the guide, which is Guru devotion. We're doing devotion toward our Guru, precious human life, and all these stages we study, we practicing. It's for to uh, removing these 10 non-virtuous actions. Otherwise, we say, oh, I have a very good devotion. I always devoting my guru, blah, blah, blah. I offering this. But if you have no hesitate to engage one of these 10 non-virtuous action, that means your practice is not correct. Your practice is something wrong there. So if through those guru devotion, through the small scope practice, if you feel very hesitated to engage, to act one of these 10 non-virtuous action, that means your practice is something helping you. Your practice is something you applying practically. So that's the way you should understand. And as a small scope practitioner, at least live your life without acting any 10 non-virtuous karma. That's now the second scope, which is called the medium scope. So the training the mind in the stages of the path shared with the person of medium capacity. So the medium capacity. Okay, before that, I was going to explain a little bit. So one of these 10 non-virtuous action, are causing by our greedies, our attachments. The greedies and attachment, of course, it's come from self, amount of ego grasping and self-centered and all of these emotion. But one of the biggest problem that we have is the attachments, in the mundane pleasures, the greedies. So much attached to the money, the power, the reputation, the fames, and all these things, material world. Because of that, we have no hesitate to kill other beings, to steal other things, as long as if you got it, So that attachment forces us to engage with all those 10 non-virtuous actions. So to get rid of these things in the small scopes, we be meditating on the death meditation, right? Death is certain, the time of death is uncertain. At the time of death, nobody can help except karma. So all these kind of like a three three roots, 3 decisions, and the 9 reasons. Yeah, I don't need to repeat again. You already got these things, but just remind you. So each root has a 3 reason. So it's all of these analytical meditation. So as long as when one of the root is that is certain. So if you able to feel, if you're able to believe from deep of your heart, one day I will going to die. That is certain. That is part of my life. When you have that kind of understanding, not only the understanding when you really experience, when you really feel, when you really believe from bottom of your heart, then the decision, I have to practice the dharma that comes there. Only the dharma can help. Nobody, right? So I will practice the dharma. So the decisions come from, you have a fear about one day you will going to die. So that fear, that root come from one of these 3 reasons. So that's why we using those reasons to make sure our hearts fully accept it, then our decisions comes much better. So that is certain, that's why our decisions have to practice the dharma. Then second root, the time of death is uncertain. That's why I have to practice right now, not just delay or after a few years, after retirement, after this. It's not just delay, it's the laziness. So you have to practice right now, that kind of determination, decisions, when you're understanding the time of death is uncertain. So nobody knows when will we die, next year, next month, next week, tomorrow. Nobody have any guarantee. So that's why the second decision comes much stronger. Then the third root, at the time of death, nobody can help except dharma. So your friend will not going to help you. Your family and friends can't help. Money can't help. Money can't. So even this body, come from mother womb to till today, and that at the time of death, even that body can't help us. So only the who can help is the dharma. So your decision comes is I have to practice dharma only. So that means my life is the first thing is only for dharma. So it's a much stronger decision. It's really changed, your decision by this that meditation. So otherwise, that meditation is just visualizing things. Your heart is even not moving anything at all. That means your practice just mean on visualizing, not movement, internal. So it's important is you have to feel, we have to experience. So that's why our heart should be really, really, any practice we do, we try to go deep of our heart and really try to experience and feel that. That will change our heart. So that meditation, then after that, taking refuge to the three jewels, you know, uh, to help to next life in order to grow the dharma internal within our mind. Only the three jewels can able to help us to refuge to three jewels. Taking refuge to the three jewels, we have to believe the law of causality, the karma system. So if you do good, result good. If you accumulate bad karma, result will be going to be bad, negative or suffering. So understanding on karma system, the believing on the karma is not just by blind faith, by reason, by logic. Apply these things, the things which are dependent on cause and condition, everything's right. So the things are dependent on cause and condition. If causes is good, result is good. If causes is bad, result is bad. Just this kind of relationship is just natural. Nobody created. It's just nature. If you put the apple seeds, it always comes apple. Doesn't matter how much we do prayers and do anything, it never turn into orange trees or banana trees. Apple seed is only going to give us the apple trees. Similarly, like that, what other substantial causes? That's the way the results come. They need substantial causes, and the results should be same entity. They need, it's not same entity, what you call, it's the same nature. They need to be kind of similar nature. They need to have that. So that kind of, understanding helps to the believing on the karma. So when you have a believing on a very strong believing on sense of a strong belief on the karma, that will really, really give us the self-protection. It's the real self-discipline. It's no need somebody or the people are looking at me, I couldn't steal because these people are looking at us. It's not about somebody there. If you have a strong belief on karma, then that's the self-discipline. Doesn't matter people see you or not. The karma will going to judge. Karma will going to give you the results. Makes you very honest, makes you really strong self-discipline. Is the believing on karma has a huge big change, that philosophy, that view on the karma law of causality. It really helps our practice, going into reality, realistic, practically helps that. So, of course, living with lots of negative emotions, even we don't want to do, but out of our anger, out of our attachment, if you accumulate any negative karma, what should we do? So I say, okay, there's a good thing. It's actually all the negative karmas are completely negative, bad. There's nothing, any good things there. But there's a one good things in the negative karma has is if you purify, those negative karma can purify it. That's the very good things there. So if you try to purify them, you can purify all your negative karmas. That's why the future never accumulate karma in the present, never in the past, whatever we accumulate the karma, before they giving the result, before they're ripening the result, we need to purify that, purify. So how should purify? Through the four powers, right? Power of relying, and the power of regrets, power of actual power, the power of confess, and the last, the power of promise. Future not going to do that again. So through the four power, we can purify all our negative karma. The four power you can use with a different practice. One of the very popular, the Vajrayana practice, the Vajrasattva practice, people do. Through the Vajrasattva practice, you apply four power. That's why you purify all your past negative karma, purify them, and the future not accumulating again a negative karma, because understanding of that meditation, understanding of, what we call taking refuge and law of causality, everything helps to not accumulate new karma, new negative karma. So the past karma you purify, and the future, if you're not accumulating negative karma, turn non-virtuous karma, there's no reason to feel fear about, three lowering sufferings, to fall into one of three lowering suffering, because if you don't have causes of that, result never ever, achieve. So that's why the small scopes, general. So in order to live like that kind of things, we need to understanding. We need somebody inspire us, somebody encourage us, somebody, what you call stimulate us, and all these things. That's why we're doing the Guru devotion practice first, to understanding the Dharma. Not only that, but also the ones inspire us, leading us, called the Guru blessing. It's a blessing which, through the devotion, to develop sense of strong faith and respect attitude. The devotion, which means actually faith and respect toward your Guru. So it's not about only the material. It's the main devotion through thoughts, devotion through deeds. Among these two, devotion through thought is much more important. Through thought, which is faith and respect attitude. How much you have strong faith with respect to Buddha, same that kind of sense of faith and respect toward your Guru. We need to apply that to your Guru. That's called the devotion. So it helps you to engage the Dharma, because the devotion, which means the relationship with your Guru and student, the devotion is Dharma relationship. It's about the Dharma. It's Dharma relationship. So that's why the what you call it's, as long as when you have a strong relationship, it helps to your minds engaging with the Dharma, closer to the Dharma. That's the point. It's not about the material. It's not about other things. It's about the Dharma relationship. And then we need internal, what you call helper, which is the precious human life. So that's why we're practicing the precious human life, which is understanding the precious human life can help us to, what you call, to help us to stimulate that into the Dharma, to oneself, take full advantages of one's own life. So we have a very important life we have, but the most of us, we don't know that it's precious. We don't know how it's important. So that's why we don't know how it's difficult to find the next time. So without knowing that, we are not appreciated. We are not using the full capacity we have. So through understanding that, then it can help to use our brain. We have right now huge big capacity. Today we use only for material, just for survive. It's similar like animals and birds. They are also doing this same, things. So rather we need to do much stronger, to feel from deep of your take full advantages of precious human life. So that helps to our mind to engage to the Dharma very strongly, very heavily, very closely. And then when you have that, then small cup, that meditations and so forth, all these understanding of three lowering suffering, taking refuge, and then believing in law of causality, the karma system, through that purifying the negative karma through the four powers. I think you need somebody, they need to mute. Can you please mute your mic? Who is joined right now? Yeah, can you mute? Okay, so now today the medium scope. So we just give you a small idea about the small scopes again. Now medium scope is main our practice, the renunciation. The medium scopes, our focus is the renunciation practice. So another word, in the small scope, we are very much emphasized on the karma, to try to avoid into the karma. So just avoiding karma alone, it's not enough. We need to deal with the causes of karma. The karma come from where? Who create those negative karma? It's come from negative emotions, right? The mental afflictions, the negative emotions. So medium scopes are emphasizes the negative emotions, to freedom from negative emotion, to achieve freedom from negative emotion, which is called the liberation, like a moksha, right? So liberation is the freedom of one's own negative emotion. It's not something different planet. And it's not something, some people have some kind of imagination of liberation, which means pure land or some kind of different planet. It's not about it. It's the simple thing is we suffer because our mind is polluted by those negative emotions. As long as the person is influenced by negative emotions, you always, experience suffering. It's always there. So in order to get rid of this negative emotion, we need to achieve liberation, the freedom of negative emotion, called the cessations of negative emotion. So that's why the medium scopes focused. So in order to achieve the liberation, first each individual need to have very strong wish to achieve that liberation. If you don't have very strong wishes to achieve the liberation, we're never ever going to achieve liberation, nirvana. So that's why first we have to learn how to generate that wishes to achieve liberation oneself. So that's called renunciation. So the renunciation, which is seeking oneself freedom from all the sufferings we have, all the causes of sufferings, which are all negative thoughts, emotions. So the person feels disgust toward general samsara suffering, specific the causes of suffering, which are negative emotion, and is desperate to seeking oneself to achieve that cessation of the suffering and causes of suffering. So that's called renunciation. So some other, sometimes they use the word called self-compassion. So maybe that self-compassion, maybe some people might be a little bit misunderstanding the self-compassion, because general, the Buddhists, the term, the compassion, when we say, always we talk about compassion, which means compassion to others, seeking others' well-being. It's the altruism. But now today, they also use the term self-compassion. And the self-compassion, sometimes people misunderstanding the self-compassion and the self-centered, selfish minds are two separated. They are not the same. So some people are thinking, self-compassion, which means self-centered, selfish mind. That's completely misunderstanding. So that's why the self-compassion, which means actually the sort of renunciation, renounce, oneself, the renounce to all the mundane pleasure, and very strong seeking of the liberation, to achieve the liberation, the freedom of the samsara, and specific the causes of samsara. So that's called renunciation or self-compassion. But I mentioned earlier, so how should we generate that wishes? How should we really, because the problem is we have a very strong attachments. That's the obstacles. The attachment on mundane pleasure, because the attachment on samsara pleasure is the one of the main obstacle who obstruct to generate liberation, to generate renunciation. So we need to, of course, we have to use our small scopes for the practice of our death meditation. All these things can help us tremendous to reduce our attachments. also we need to do another thing. So how should we really reduce our attachments? Now we should think we have so much attached toward the material world, toward this mundane pleasure, towards money, towards what you call reputations, powers, fames, everywhere, right? Anything, all those objects are the objects of attachments. That's how we attach. As long as our mind is stuck into those material, then how should we build renunciation? Because you follow your attachment. Renunciation should seeking oneself freedom of attachment, that attachment. So seeking oneself separating from the attachment, that's the go to the renunciation. But if you have a very strong attached to those material, your attachment is growing, so its renunciation is impossible. Impossible. So in order to get rid of attachment, we have to understanding the nature of those mundane samsara. What are that? Because most of us, we just follow, we just believe things they appearing in our mind. Whatever they appearing our mind, we believe that. So then these mundane things, when they appear in our mind, it looks like very attractive. It looks like very beautiful. It's very attractive. That's why we believe these are the precious. These are the very good. These are the great, gracious. So it creates us attachments. So that's why it's very hard to get rid of these attachments. So therefore, first, understanding the disadvantages of those attachment, those negative emotions, and how do we separate it from them? How do we live, separate from this attachment? And these negative emotions, not only attachment, there are tons and tons of negative emotions we have. And those negative emotions are part of our mind. So nobody can take out our mind. How smart person, how intelligent person, how holy beings, nobody can able to take out our attachments, greedies, or self-centers, angers, and all those negative emotions. Nobody can able to remove that. This is completely self-responsibility because this is part of your consciousness. This is part of your mind. So you are the person can remove that, can change that. Nobody can do that. Of course, in order to do these things, we need somebody. Otherwise, you think, oh, then why we rely on teacher? Why we rely on Buddhas and Dhamma and Sangha? Why we need to rely if nobody can able to remove this? It means we rely on Buddha, Dhamma, Sangha. We rely on our teacher is, I mentioned earlier, to help us to understand how to get rid of this, to encourage us, to inspire us. So it's these others who help us to get rid of these things. But the final is self have to do that. So it's so important as a practitioner first take sense of self-responsibility. Because sometimes when you have a faith and respect to our gurus and Buddha Dhamma Sangha, sometimes our faith is going extreme. It's too much blind faith or too much extremes. So that means, oh, Buddha Dhamma Sangha can able to fix my problem, or my guru can able to fix my problem. I just do prayer for them. I just offering them, prayer them, doing prostrating them, or anything I do. But these other being can able to take out my negative thoughts, emotion, my suffering. Like that kind of belief is completely mistake. That is not going to help us. We have to stay with the reality. If those beings will able to take it out, then why they're not taking? All the enlightened beings have love and compassion to each and all beings, completely equal. They have a tremendous strong sense of love and sense of compassion, unconditional love and compassion to all of them, all beings. So if they can able to take out our negative thoughts and emotions, then why not they're taking? Right? That's a simple caution why they're not taking. So that's we should understand it. This is completely self-responsibility. Have to self have to do that. And of course, we rely on them to, I mentioned earlier, to understanding the Dharma, to encourage, to getting the blessing, to inspire us, to accumulate our virtues and merits, to purify our obstacles and so forth. That's we rely them to help that. But the final decision self. So it's important to make sure each of us should take full responsibility. So and also good thing is you have full power to remove those negative thoughts, emotions. In order to remove those mental afflictions, those sufferings today we have, it's not depend on money, it's not dependent on material anybody. So it's all over us has completely same potential to remove our negative thoughts, emotions, to remove our suffering and causes of sufferings. But the good thing is, as born in precious human life, called the leisure opportunities, freedom from 10 non-leisures, right? And the freedom from 8 non-leisures, and the opportunities called 10 opportunities, 5 from self, 5 from others. So I don't need to repeat, we finished that in the past. So understanding that, it's really, we are very, very fortunate and we have full equipment. If you use your equipment to get rid of those negative emotions, you have full package of equipments as a human beings, engage with the Dharma, engage with the great masters, your brain have no problems at all. So everything's, today you have is full package. So now if you don't use that, then day by day, these are declining, then one day it will lose. Then finish. We can't do that. That's why the understanding the precious human life does really help us to stimulate, to take full advantages of life you have right now. So understanding that now, how should we do that? First, when attachments comes, we attach because when we think seeing beautiful, we never attach when we see this is bad, this is negative, this is suffering. When we see like that, there's no chance to feel attached to them. So the problem is we don't understanding the real, the mundane, the pleasures today we have. We don't understanding that. That's why first to understanding the reality, those nature, conventional nature of this the material which surrounded us is through the Four Noble Truths. The Four Noble Truths will help us to develop our renunciation practice. So in order to generate the renunciation, Four Noble Truth, the practice of Four Noble Truth is very important. It's to really, really help us to generate the renunciation. So the first noble truth, among the Four Noble Truths, the first noble truth is called the truth of suffering. Then second, the truth of origin of suffering. Then the third, the truth of cessation of sufferings. And the last, truth path, who leads into that cessation. So these are the Four Noble Truths. So Four Noble Truths is not just only sort of like a academic philosophy or something. This is really, if you seriously study and practice, this is you have to use as a practical. And through understanding Four Noble Truths, did you really helps to generate your renunciation? Did you really understanding the reality of these mundane pleasures, what they are? So if you really understand that, not just satisfied in the appearing sight, the appearing just beautiful doesn't mean they are really, exist that way. So that's why the truth of suffering. So the first we learn the suffering as a suffering. Truth of suffering, meditating on truth of suffering, which is to understand suffering as a suffering. It's not something pleasure we try to look at as suffering. If this is pleasure, then if you look as a suffering, that means mistake. So if this is pleasure, then pleasure. So, but the point is, things are not really pleasure, but our mind, because of living under the influence of attachment, when they appear, the object in our mind is appearing like something very pleasure. But the reality, they are not really pleasure. These are part of suffering. So that's why we learn the Four Noble Truths as the reality, how they are, how they exist, these things. So now first, truth of suffering. Truth of suffering, the detail, of course, you look in Lama Tsongkhapa Lamrim's and the liberation in the palm of your hand, the Pabonka Lamrim's, when you read it, and they explain 8 different types of suffering, 6 different types of suffering, 3 different types of suffering. So it's quite important to think about the suffering. 8 different types of suffering, 6 different types of suffering, 3 different types of suffering. So these are easy, you read it there. Each of them they're explaining very nicely, very detailed, specific. Lama Tsongkhapa Lamrim has, the explanation of these variety sufferings are very, very detailed, and it's not really complicated, and it's quite easy to understand. So today I'm going to talk about here the 3 different types of suffering, which is all the suffering, including in 3 different types of suffering. 3 different types of suffering, which are called suffering of suffering, changing suffering, and pervasive suffering or suffering of conditioning. So the suffering of suffering, which is one more gross level of suffering. The changing suffering is a little bit subtle. Then the pervasive suffering is much, much deeper, the suffering of conditioning. So your understanding of suffering only without knowing those 2 other suffering, then always really hard to get rid of your attachments, because you will still attach to the other 2 different types of sufferings. And if you have a difficulty to get rid of attachment to them, then of course it's more difficult to develop renunciation. And without renunciation, then compassion to other sentient beings are impossible. So in order to develop compassion to others, first they need to develop compassion oneself. It's called the renunciation. So the renunciation, without having renunciation, then the compassion to others is very difficult. That's why it's so important to first understanding all variety of suffering. The suffering of sufferings are easy. Today, the mundane, like people talk about, oh, my business is so much wrong. I have a suffering of aging. I'm sick now, and then people are dying, suffering of death, and suffering of rebirths, and all this the suffering, today we have, and even the worldly concern about the suffering. They say, oh, these are the suffering. But these are suffering of suffering, like physical suffering, suffering of aging, sickness, death, and suffering of birth, and so forth. And the mental sufferings we have is suffering of fear, stress, and depressions, and anxieties, and all those pain we have within our mind. All of them are part of suffering. It's a very gross level of suffering. These suffering as a suffering. We need to understand as a suffering. And these are not that much difficult, right? Everybody knows that. Now the second level of suffering is called the suffering of changing. So the suffering of changing is, I think, quite important to know that. What is the suffering of changing is actually the mundane pleasure. So ordinary people, when we consider as, oh, this is happiness, this is pleasure, this is great. And from the Dharma perspective, these are also part of suffering. These are not really genuine happiness. First, when we think, when you are looking the job, so not having job, you're suffering stress, you're very much worried. Then finally you found a job. When you got the job, you're very exciting. So wow, great, this is happiness. Now I found a job. It's pleasure, happiness. So you think this is the happiness. But from the Dharma perspective, this is still suffering. Because if this is happiness, that means when you first got it also, you have to be full satisfaction, full joy. Each time when you on this process, when you're utilizing that, when you're living with this job, you have to be more happier. But these things, when you first got it, one part of your mind very happy, and also the behind there being some concern, some worry. Oh, I have to do this, I have to, all these things behind there. Then each day when you work, each day, then stress, then depressions, anxiety, you have fear, you have angry. So there are many other emotion arises because of this job. So if this is 100% ultimate peace, ultimate happiness, of course, first time when you got full of happiness, when you use that, you have to be more happier. When you're living with these kind of things, you have to be more happier. But these things, when you live more longer, then it's turn. It can create you stress, depressions, fear, the worry, all those emotions, right? So it's called suffering of changing. It looks pleasure first. Then day by day, it's turned into suffering. Day by day, it can causes you, create more worry, fear, inner pains, and physical suffering. That's called suffering of changing. So all this material world, all the pleasures we have today, all of them are part of that suffering of changing. Like a family life, like a luxury life or houses and anything. Like for instance, the car, that many people are very much strong attached to their car. So they try to buy the very expensive, fancy car, and they think this is the happiness. And the majority are the people thinking that way. But if this expensive car, if this is the full of joy, happy, of course, when you got it, I mentioned earlier, full of happiness. Same time when you use that, you have to be enjoying more. Same, it's not going to stay there. First, when you got it, of course, one part of your mind is very exciting, very happy. Same time behind there's some kind of worry. Now you have to pay gas, the money for the gas, the insurance, and all sort of these things to taking care of that. So if we have more luxury, more fancy, when you park in the street, always one part of your mind is always worry. Or somebody will going to steal that. Somebody will going to scratch that. Somebody will go. So all those worry, the mind, not really peace and calmness. Instead of that, always there is some kind of worry stay there because of that car. So if this is full of happiness, of course you have to be full of joy, full of happy. But it's not that. It's always the great. Then each time when you use more, then slowly, because of that car being broken, you have to pay for it, repeat it, for, do all these things to serve to this car. I have to spend so much money, so much angry, so much worry. So all this inner, the anxiety and pain because of these cars. So every materials we have, it's part of something of changing, something. But unfortunately, human beings, our brain didn't see that. We can't read that because it's too much, polluted by that attachments, the greedies. So it's take over. So we didn't see the reality of this. What is that real things? We didn't see that. So the thing is, we have to use this logic, the reason, to think more again and again to fully understand these are not real happiness. These are part of suffering. Then all the materials, family life, or the job, the houses, the monies, everything today we have is part of suffering. But we have to think again and go much deeper. Don't just satisfy with appearance, rather much think long term and go much deeper that. Then you can see all of them are unstable, right? Everything will be changed. That's called the suffering of changing. And this is very important as if you want to develop the renunciation, if you want to achieve the liberation, you know, ultimate peace and happiness, we need to have very strong sense of wish to achieve that. In order to generate that wish, called the renunciation, we have to understanding the reality of these mundane pleasures are part of suffering of changing. And then third level of suffering, which called the suffering of the pervasive suffering or suffering of conditioning, which is suffering of living under the influence of mental afflictions. So why we see that? Why we doing this? Because we are living under the influence of mental affliction. So it's not about what they are. It's about what you see. That creates your feeling. So what you see, it's based on where you look. So where you're looking is what kind of glasses you're wearing. If you're wearing the glasses of attachment, everything you're seeing through out of attachment. If you're looking through out of love and compassion, everything creates you, helps you to develop your love and compassion, seeing completely different things. So that's why today our mind is completely polluted by those negative thoughts, emotions. It's a very, very difficult to get rid of these sufferings because our mind is full of dominated by mental afflictions. So living under the influence of negative thoughts, emotion, our decision, our action, our lifestyle, everything's come from that mind, right? Our action is based on our mind. So our decisions come from our mind. So if this mind is living under the influence of mental afflictions, our decision will always going to be a mistake because negative thoughts, emotions are part of mistaken consciousness, the wrong consciousness. So the wrong, mistaken consciousness is always decisions comes mistake, wrong. That's how our lifestyle become a mistake, the wrong. That's why we ended up with a suffering. So therefore, pervasive suffering of conditioning, suffering of pervasive suffering, which is living under the influence of negative thoughts, emotions. So living under the influence of mental afflictions, if your life is living under the influence of negative thoughts, emotion, always remains suffering. So that's why one of the hardest difficulties is understanding the pervasive suffering. Because we always thinking, I suffer because of the community, because of the system, because of extra. We always try to point it out there. We never ever try to point inside our mind. We suffer because of our too much sense of selfish, our too much sense of attachment, our too much have anger. We never think that. We always thinking we suffer because of that. So we don't understanding, these the negative emotion sufferings. We don't understanding the suffering of negative thoughts, emotions. So that's why first it's so important to understanding the disadvantages of negative thoughts and emotions. The disadvantages of negative thoughts and emotions, if you know that, then you feel disgust toward your own negative thought emotion instead of other beings, other people. Suffering, you suffer because of your negative emotions. So when you see that, then there's a chance to stay away from those negative emotions. Never feel like a welcoming those negative emotions. Right now, we're welcoming them. Whenever they comes, they're freedom. They're free. We have full, space to them. We inviting them. We following them, toward them. So we follow them. So everything we're doing is their negative thoughts and emotions. Because we don't understanding how horrible these are, how bad these minds are, how much is damaging us, how much is create suffering us. We don't understand that. That's why we don't have wishes to stay away from them. If you don't have strong wishes to stay away from them, you're never ever going to free from them. You never ever get to remove them. In order to eliminate, remove, in order to seize them, first make sure you really want to get rid of them. You really feel, stay away from them. So that's why in order to know that, we have to understanding the disadvantages of those negative thoughts, emotions. So that's why the third level of suffering, the suffering of mental affliction, is very, very crucial, very, very important, necessary, because we looking at the free cessation, ultimate peace, ultimate happiness. Cessation, the ultimate peace and happiness, which is not something different place. Some people have imagination of heaven. Oh, my parents are there, my this is there. It's sort of they looking their ultimate peace, which is something different planet. As a Buddhist, you suffer. It's not because of this earth. We suffer because our mind is under the influence of negative thoughts and emotions. When we say I'm suffering, what really we think? Suffering is where? It's not about outside there. Suffering, which means each individual, the mental experience. So when you feel suffering, your mind experiencing in pain and suffering, that means you are suffering. If your mind is full of joy, full of peace, full of pleasure, then external life, whatever you stay, you are happy. So happiness and suffering is not about external material. It's fully about one's own mental experience. Otherwise, living external materials luxury, if that means happiness, then all those rich people, all those powerful people must be really, really happy. If these are really happy, like superstars, if these beings are very happy, then why? There are a number of those beings who have a problem about alcohol, who have a problem about the drugs addiction, alcoholism, so much. If their mind is full of joy, full of peace, full of satisfaction, why are they going to use these drugs? They know those drugs are going to kill them, going to create problems, the physical, mental, emotionally. Why are they going there? So we should learn it's about the mind. It's not about the material. So that's why we need to be educated more deeper education, not just on the surface. So that's why it's important to understand all these pains and suffering is negative thoughts and emotions. So as long as if you're living with mental affliction, the first result that will destroy your peace, anger with joy, impossible. If you're angry, you have no peace, right? So it's negative emotions, whenever they arises, that will disturb first one's own happiness, one's own peace. Then it will affect your physical action, your speech, completely turn into violent. That's why it creates problems within your family, society, community, everywhere. So all these points come from selfish, anger, attachment, those negative emotions. Those negative emotions, small, it can disturb oneself, disturb your family. Big things, the world, nation, each other, war, killing millions each other because of that negative emotion. Negative emotion, the fundamental causes of all those violence. Otherwise, simple. It is saying like more than 7 billion human beings living in this beautiful earth. Nobody wants suffering. Clear, no doubt. Everybody wants to live happy, like us. And all of them are suffering. All those 7 billion people, majority are suffering. And those suffering is not created by aliens or some different planet. Those suffering is created by human beings. We create the suffering. We suffering. Nobody wants suffering. And they're all suffering. And they are the people who create the suffering. Why? How? So what mistake we're doing? That's because we don't understand really suffering come from where. So all these problems is mental affliction. As long as living under the influence of negative thoughts, emotions, always pain, always suffering. So that's why first, as practitioner who really wants to develop renunciation, first understanding of one's own negative emotion, as the fundamental causes of suffering. This is your enemy. This is the poison. We're going to kill all the good things, but not just saying. It's important to each individual. Make sure you're understanding that. So that's the whole truth of suffering. So today we're going to discuss truth of suffering. That I'm going to leave here. It's already 1 hour ago now. So next Saturday, I have a Nyungne retreat here, so we're not going to do that. Maybe next Saturday, but I will send you the message when I'm available. So we're going to leave here. Just read more Four Noble Truths and through our link of interdependent origination, which are these are the two main, the medium scopes, study, learning them, meditating them. The point is to understanding the Four Noble Truths and through our link of interdependence. It's to develop renunciation. So the next class we're going to discuss Four Noble Truth of suffering today. Maybe 80% finished, but we have still left there, and then truth of origin of suffering and truth of cessation and suffering, and then truth paths we're going to discuss next time. Okay, we're going to leave here, and today one request is through the practice and through discuss about this dharma here, whatever we accumulate our virtues and merits. Of course, the first thing is we should dedicate to His Holiness the Dalai Lama, stay very, very, very long life and fulfill of his wishes. And mainly, another request is, or most of you knows, you are the student of Geshe Tamjala, who founded the Lamrim Buddhist Center at the Johannesburg, and they have a branch in Durban and there. So many of you get many teachings from him, and he's getting older, and he's quite sick these days. So all of us dedicate our virtues and merit toward him to stay very, very long life and recover his health and fulfill wishes, for his whatever he has wishes. That's very important. And if every day, if you have time, at least recite the medicine Buddha mantras as a daily, and always into the practice we should dedicate to Geshe. So that's one very important request, and he's quite sick right now. So I heard about some students already doing this practice, and Lamrim in Johannesburg and Durban, sometime the students will gathering together and do some kind of medicine Buddha puja. If the students doing this practice, is more effective, more benefiting to our masters. So that's why all of you this important time to recite more medicine Buddha mantra. Okay, that's today. I'm going to recite some dedication, the prayer here, and maybe next time I will going to leave question answer section. So if you have any questions, not next Saturday, maybe next Saturday, we're going to do question answer section. Taki Jini Sabe Gewa de Dendan Joa Queen La Campin Jebra losan trapa kembe yingbo rinto seje jo chujun lami koze rabdi ji nanga tili chuchuru jeba dan losan tenbe trene losan ji juye mise tato ji juwe kanri rabi kowe shinkanso pendan ter wama li chungwe tere sima tenzin jabi sidi pato tenjuwe tenjuwe simjo rinpo je ma ke pa nan ji jeba nyamba me pa ya kone kondo pewa jo. Okay, thank you.